Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and the varied traditions and customs of Jewish communities around the world. It is preparation time for Rosh Hashanah, and I can't get this tune out of my head. Dip the apple in the honey, make a bracha loud and clear. Shana tova umetuka, have a happy, sweet new year. Almost every English-speaking preschooler belts out this song every year on Rosh Hashanah and around Rosh Hashanah. It's a tradition handed down from parents to children, from sibling to sibling. Singing about dipping apples in honey has come to be as much a universal tradition as actually dipping the apples in the honey itself. Or is it? Truth be told, not every Jew in the world celebrates the traditions of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, in the same way. Even dipping apples in honey is not universal. The Jewish people are united in so many ways, wonderful ways. But it is the nuanced differences between us, between Jews from around the world, that compose the beautiful mosaic called Jewish tradition. In today's world, there are many Jews who follow the tradition of the great Rabbi Chaim Palachshi of Smyrna, also known as Izmir in Turkey. He served as chief rabbi of Turkey, or he was also known as the Chacham Bashi of Izmir. At the behest of the Ottoman authorities, he was the leader. These Jews do not dip apples in honey on Rosh Hashanah. They do not dip anything in honey on Rosh Hashanah. And yet, they too share in the tradition of wishing a sweet new year. The great rabbi asserted that certain parts of bees, especially their legs, often linger and remain in the honey itself. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to the eater of that honey, those body parts, known as birya, are digested, and that is a major violation of the laws of kashrut. So the Jews of Turkey, and many others who follow this great rabbi's teachings, simply dip the apples in sugar, not in honey. Another tradition followed by the Jews of Turkish ancestry is that they save the matzah from Passover, from the Seder, to consume it on Rosh Hashanah. Pesach matzah symbolizes freedom from slavery. These Jews are eating that matzah on Rosh Hashanah, symbolizing being saved from the evil decrees. Interesting. For many people, Rosh Hashanah is a time to gather together with family members. There is usually one home that serves as the family base. If we're lucky, it's the home of the best cook in the family. Often it's the home of one of the grandparents, or the largest home, or the most centrally located home. On Rosh Hashanah, the Jews of Iran go to the homes of their families and family members where someone died recently during the course of the year. There they recite the entire book of Psalms twice. The book of Psalms is composed of 150 chapters. Multiplied by 2, that equals 300. 300 in Gematria, or the numerological equivalent for the word kfar, which means to forgive. Kfar or kapara, forgiveness is what we ask for on the high holidays. Iranian Jews read Psalms on Rosh Hashanah and they're asking forgiveness from the deceased. In Yemenite tradition, the shofar is not only blown during the Musaf section, but it is also done during the Shacharit, or the morning service as well. During Shacharit, 30 notes are blown. It is a jarring sense to hear the shofar so early in the morning before the accustomed time. The shofar ceremony, in most traditions, the centerpiece of the service. When the synagogue is most crowded, that's when we blow the shofar. The eating of simanim, or food wordplays, is traditional in many cultures and families. But the choicest simanim are not universal at all. The Hebrew word for carrots is gezer. Gezer is the exact same word as edict or ruling. Using the wordplay, carrots are often consumed in the hope that God will rule in our favor, that God's edict, who determines who will live and who will die, will be in our benefit. Moroccan Jews eat 7 cooked vegetables on Rosh Hashanah. Some Hasidic sects give a new knife to every member of the family, and they sharpen the new knife. The knives symbolize wealth and success. On the eve of Rosh Hashanah, all the Jews of Aram Soba, the Syrian Jews of Aleppo, would get their haircuts. And after their haircut, each person would say to their Jewish barber the word Ne'eman. In Arabic, Ne'eman means bless you. It is similar to the Hebrew word Amen. The barber's response would be Yinam Alek. You should be blessed also. Interesting. And so they blessed one another in Arabic and not in Hebrew. And that was not because there was an accident. Hebrew was a holy language, and Hebrew was not to be spoken in places like the bathroom, the bathhouse, or even in their eyes, the barber shop. During the last days of Elul, on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, children of the Tunisian city of Jerba would collect olives. They would pickle the olives in salt and then walk the streets handing them out. They would call out olives, dizitin, yehi ratzon. Olives are one of the 7 species special to the land of Israel. And so they would say, may it be God's will, yehi ratzon. There is no right way and no wrong way when it comes to tradition. It is your way that really matters. It's your way of keeping the family traditions and the family heritage alive. It is a way of remembering and commemorating. And there is always room for new traditions. Our family tradition is to blend the old tradition with new. Each Rosh Hashanah we devise new word plays in English or in Hebrew or even in Yiddish and in Latin. Our tradition is to be creative linguistically on our Yehi Ratzons. Whatever your tradition, honey or sugar, knives or disposable plastic, I wish a happy, healthy, sweet new year to all. K'tiva v'chatima tova. Coming up, points of view. First up is a column from the Jewish Press. This column is written by Allison Josephs and is entitled The Impact, Not Intent, of Jewish Face. It was published on August 30th, 2023. Josephs writes a very thoughtful piece about how Jews are portrayed in film and in culture. The recently premiered movie entitled Maestro, which delves into the life of the famed Jewish composer Leonard Bernstein, is the catalyst of her argument. But her point is far larger than the debate that has evolved around the super large prosthetic nose worn by the actor Bradley Cooper in his portrayal of Bernstein. This is how she begins. When it comes to the rules Hollywood has established to prevent discrimination of other minority groups, impact, not intent, is what matters. Yet with the recent release of Netflix Maestro trailer, featuring Gentile actor Bradley Cooper donning a prosthetic nose even larger than the composer Leonard Bernstein's actual nose, many people are downplaying the harm because it lacked anti-Semitic intent. Bernstein's children released a statement supporting the schnoz. But large noses have been used to vilify Jews for nearly 1,000 years in Western media. Why doesn't the impact of Jew face count? Joseph explains the history of the stereotype of the large Jewish nose. She explains where it comes from and does an excellent job tracing the development of Western society's fascination with the hateful image of the Jew. The column continues. Next, we need to understand the history of both enlarged noses specifically and complexity of the Jew face as old anti-Semitic tropes and practices. Starting in the 12th century, Jews became hooked-nosed in European paintings and an effort to vilify them. The 2 church councils of 1267 forced Jews to wear pointy hats. Those hats, coupled with hooked-nosed trope, led to Jews becoming the inspiration for witches. Jon Stewart was right about the goblins in Harry Potter, looking Jewish, not because anyone associated the films is necessarily anti-Semitic, but rather because little men with big noses counting money is yet another trope that was born out of Jew hatred. The practice of the stage Jew began in the 1600s with Shakespeare's character, when non-Jewish actors would wear Jewish garb and enlarged noses to mock and degrade Jews. This is actually where the blackface originated too. While Sarah Silverman popularized the term Jew face to mean non-Jewish actors getting cast as Jews, an important topic within this larger conversation, it has an older and more sinister origin. Jew face was done in minstrels in Eastern Europe and the United States starting in the 1800s with the same enlarged noses, Jewish garb and Jewish effect. Sometimes it was secular Jews dressing up and mocking their religious brethren. Other times it was non-Jews or anti-Semitic regimes, like the Bolsheviks, who manipulated secular Jews with the promise of self-preservation to throw religious Jews under the bus. Jew face was done in the United States, including in the antebellum. The Central Conference of American Rabbis in 1909 passed a resolution to protest the existence of the stage Jew because they felt it was causing so much harm to the image of Jews. Nazis also employed Jew face in the 1940 propaganda film, The Eternal Jew. Now Joseph looks at the Jewish nose in literature and film, in the works of Dickens and Dahl, the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and its character, the child catcher. Now back to the enlarged nose in modern media. Charles Dickens wrote the Jewish character Fagin in Oliver Twist, laden with anti-Semitic imagery, a very shriveled Jew whose villainous-looking and repulsive face. George Cruikshank, the illustrator for the original novel, gave Fagin a large hooked nose. In 1948, actor Alec Guinness wore a prosthetic nose to match the book. Another infamously anti-Semitic writer, Roald Dahl, was slightly more subtle in his anti-Semitic Jewish imagery. In the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang screenplay, he added the child catcher. Think blood libels of Jews stealing Christian children, a character that was not even in the book. The child catcher is described as having a black hat, long black coat, and a pointed nose. In the 1968 film, actor Robert Helpman also donned the prosthetic nose. Billy Crystal in 1987, The Princess Bride, played a Jewish character, Miracle Max, and wore a gigantic fake nose, along with a heavy Yiddish accent. Some 20 years ago, Saturday Night Live did a parody of Blossom, and the actress parodying Mayim Bialik wore a prosthetic enlarged nose. And in the series Unfortunate Events, the family is Jewish, which means that the hook-nosed, conniving, murderous relative Count Olaf, played by two Gentiles, Jim Carrey and Neil Patrick Harris, is too. In conclusion, Joseph explains the real danger in not recognizing these deliberate characterizations of the Jew as hate crimes. She writes, with a long, troubling history of Jews being vilified and mocked through large noses and garb, in an age of reckoning to do better by marginalizing groups, no matter the intention or context, Jewface should join its blackface counterpart in the dustbins of racist history. This is especially important considering the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in the country. Per the 2021 FBI hate crime report, Jews are the most attacked minority in the United States. Representation matters for Jews too. Let's stop making excuses why this form of racism is okay. This is a wonderful column. Thank you very much, Mr. Josephs. Next up is a column by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. It was published in Ynet on August 24, 2023, after the mayor returned from his visit to Israel. It's entitled, Israel's Future is Its Young People, subtitled, in an exclusive op-ed for Ynet News, New York City Mayor Eric Adams reminds Israelis that even amid political strife and heated public debate, Israel continues to prove its strength and innovation reflected in its determined youth. God did not take you this far to abandon you. That was the subtitle. It was actually a major quote from the column itself. So I want to read you much of the column because I think it's so powerful and so important. It gives you a sense of where Adams is coming from. Mayor Adams' support for Israel is made perfectly clear in the column. He begins, it's no secret how much I love and appreciate Israel. This was my first trip to the Holy Land as mayor of New York, and I felt right at home during my entire visit. Israel and New York City share an unbreakable bond, and it only deepened on this trip. I had an opportunity to visit the many places where history has been made and speak with so many people who are dedicated to creating an even better future for Israel. When I visited Yad Vashem, I saw how powerful imagery of the Holocaust. I saw the rows of pages filled with the names of Jews who were killed. It was a moment of powerful reflection. It was a moment of renewal, a commitment to not only saying never again, but living never again. This was an emotional trip for me as I prayed at the Western Wall and visited the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem's Old City. I thought of my mother. She always wanted to visit, and while she physically never had a chance to make it to Israel, she was undoubtedly with me in spirit. This is a pivotal moment for Israel. As the mayor of a city whose residents can hold widely differing and opposing views on many subjects, I understand the importance of having difficult discussions. Democracy is never easy, and it is only by confronting our differences that we can emerge stronger. And while Israel faces challenges today, I know its future is bright. Whenever I was faced with a challenge, my mother would say to me, "You make the determination if that challenge is a burial or a planting." I believe when you are faced with challenges, there is a lesson, and this moment is going to become a planting. Israel is a great nation, a nation that was born out of sand, a nation that was built with the threat of violence over it. Israelis are a resilient people, and God did not take you this far to abandon you. On this trip, I met many people, but I was especially struck by the young people I spoke with. They are full of compassion, drive, and strength. The future is theirs. They will determine what Israel is going to be and what it will look like for the next 100 years. Now is not the time to say, "Woe is me." Now is the time to say, "Why not me?" I am so pleased to have visited Israel in this moment as you build your future. Thank you, Mayor Adams, for that optimistic and enlightening thought. Coming up next, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 7 cartoons, memes, and headlines today. First up is a play on the spectacular television comedy about a cool teacher and his colorful students called Welcome Back, Kotter. The program aired for 4 seasons from 75 to 79. In this first slide, Mr. Kotter asks, what is the difference between a drug cartel and the government? The second slide has Horshack, one of the students, waving his hand, shouting, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, ooh." And in the third slide, Horshack answers, a drug cartel doesn't force you to take their drug. This is both very funny and biting, a biting critique of forced vaccinations, especially as COVID infections continue to climb. Next up is a headline and a tease for an article. The headline reads, "You can procrastinate later. Here's how you can get things done now." And then on the bottom it reads, "Read when you have time to spare." Simply perfect. Just the thing for people who procrastinate. And I'm around a handful of people who procrastinate all the time, so this is useful. This next piece is an important correction to an obituary about a man I knew for many years. It reads, an obituary on Thursday about Moel Philip L. Sherman misstated a way Mr. Sherman described himself. He said he was the only motorcycle riding Moel in the Screen Actors Guild, not the only motorcycle riding rabbi. Phil Sherman was a mythic character, a Moel par excellence. He performed over 26,000 britot, circumcisions, in his career. His record was 11 in a single day. He was smart, witty, funny, and he always had spectacular ideas and was this wonderful cantor, a beautiful voice. This next meme is about the former planet Pluto. It reads, this is Pluto. Pluto used to be the 9th planet of the solar system until 2006, when scientists removed it from the list and declared it a dwarf planet. But Pluto continued orbiting the sun as before. Pluto doesn't care what others think about it. Be like Pluto. This next cartoon is just wonderful. The cartoonist tries to imagine what dogs are thinking. The dog instructor is talking to his dog students and says today's topic is how to tell if you're actually going to the vet. He's teaching them to listen to the voice as they hear the question. Want to go for a ride or want to go for a ride? The first time the voice goes slightly up. The second, it goes up, down, then up. And that's how you know what's really happening. This next meme makes fun of all the sports drinks. We see a hose with water streaming from the nozzle, and the caption reads, "The official sports drink when I was a kid." That's hilarious, and of course it's true. Finally, a pretty good definition of an intellectual. It reads, "My definition of an intellectual is someone who can listen to the William Tell Overture without thinking of the Lone Ranger."
The Lone Ranger. Are you still there?
In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Israeli Prime Minister's plane, which is dubbed Wings of Zion, will officially take its first flight in November during the visit of both Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog to the Dubai Climate Conference. For now, the plane's operational flight tests are taking place. Wings of Zion is equipped with the latest defense and communication systems, and we are told it promises to provide a comfortable ride as well. Papua New Guinea Prime Minister James Marpay arrived for a state visit in Israel. He came to participate in the inauguration ceremony of the country's opening of their embassy in Jerusalem. Papua New Guinea is the fourth country to open an embassy in Jerusalem, following the footsteps of the United States, Guatemala, and Kosovo. Other countries will be following suit soon, and I'll be telling you about them as they open their embassies. Reuters is reporting that according to quarterly reports, the IAEA, the United Nations Nuclear Energy Watchdog Group, reported no progress in talks with Iran on sensitive issues such as reinstalling surveillance cameras and explaining uranium traces at undeclared sites. At the same time, Iran's stock of uranium, already enriched to 60% purity and getting closer to 90%, which is what is required for nuclear weapons grade, continued to grow, albeit at a slower pace, despite some of it having been diluted. This information comes from one of the confidential International Atomic Energy reports made available to members. The reports, which were sent to IAEA members, state ahead of the quarterly meetings that the IAEA 35-nation Board of Governors read. According to the report, Iran's stock of uranium enriched to 60% grew by an estimated 7.5 kilos to 121.6 kilos. That's a high level, and it's a lot of uranium. An Israeli suicide, or kamikaze Ma'oz suicide drone, struck Palestinian terrorists who fired at IDF forces during activity in Jenin refugee camp. 3 wanted persons were also arrested in the operation. Ma'oz drones are used for monitoring, but they can also be used as guided missiles when necessary. Novo Nordisk launched its weight loss injection Wegovy in Britain. This is its second debut in Europe in just over a month. The drug maker is seeking to expand in the region just as it struggles to keep up the soaring demand. According to a statement released by the Danish drug maker, Wegovy would be available in the UK through controlled and limited launch. Surging demand for the drug and Novo's highly effective diabetes drug, Ozempic, and everyone's heard of that, have sent the company's shares to record high earnings. Novo's statement noted that the drug will be available both within the National Health Service's weight management scheme and privately through a registered healthcare professional. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, speaking after a meeting with his counterpart Vladimir Putin in Sochi, in Russia, said that Ukraine should soften its negotiating position against Russia in talks over reviving grain export deals. Erdogan said Ukraine needs to especially soften its approaches in order for it to be possible for joint steps to be taken with Russia. That was a quote. He also said that more grain is needed to be destined to Africa rather than European countries to prevent starvation there in Africa. Ukraine and Russia combined provide 1/3 of the world's grain. As background, the United Nations and Turkey had brokered a deal that guaranteed exports from Ukrainian ports to Europe and Africa. The deal lasted a year. It ended in July when Moscow pulled out, complaining that its own food fertilizer exports faced obstacles in exports. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated in a post on X that Israel will build a new border fence along the border with Jordan. Netanyahu wrote, and I'm quoting here, "We erected a fence on the southern border with Egypt and stopped the infiltration from there into Israel. We thereby stopped over 1 million infiltrations from Africa, which would have destroyed our country. Now we build a fence on our eastern border, Jordan, and ensure that there will be no infiltration from there. We will protect our borders. We will protect our country." Netanyahu's announcement came a few days after the IDF cleared for publication that they had thwarted an attempt to smuggle Iranian-produced explosives from Jordan to Israel in July. At the end of July, the IDF announced that it had thwarted an unusual weapons smuggling attempt in the Jordan Valley near Ashdod Yaakov. According to Khan Media, it is assumed that the explosives were intended for terrorist organizations in the West Bank. The smuggling investigation was assigned to the Shin Bet. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant also informed the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committees that a new border fence with Jordan was going to be built to prevent the smuggling of weapons to the West Bank. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Did you know that the Talmud, at the end, the very, very end of the Tractate of Brachot, has an unbelievable line? I'm reminded of the line because of something Mayor Adams said. He said, be a planting. In other words, be a contributor. Build, plant, produce, for now and for the future. In almost the very last line of the section of the Talmud Brachot, on page 64, folio page A, the rabbis make a wordplay. They say, Al tikra banaich, ele bonaich. The wordplay is two words, banaich and bonaich, ben and boneh. Ben means child, in this case, it's plural, your children. Boneh means to build, and in this case, your builders. In other words, the final lines of this tractate, the very first tractate in the Talmud, says build. We should remember that we, Jews, are builders. Others destroy, but our tradition is a tradition of building and contributing. I want to take a moment to wish everyone a Shana Tova. Shana Tova is a greeting that we traditionally wish friends, family, and acquaintances all through the holidays, from Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah, all the way through the end of Simchat Torah. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year. Now I'm going to blow shofar. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.